Their bitter rivalry began long before the UFC, right inside Glory kickboxing rings. Pereira got the upper hand in their 2016 debut by unanimous decision. Then in their 2017 rematch in Sao Paulo, delivered a crushing left hook that knocked out Adesanya in round 3. Despite Adesanya's slick footwork, Pereira's power overshadowed him twice, resulting in one of MMA's greatest grudges. After that, Adesanya quickly rose to the top of the UFC middleweight division, winning the championship in 2019 and defending it several times. Meanwhile, Pereira joined the UFC in late 2021, later admitting he was motivated by Adesanya's dismissive remarks, like saying Pereira would end up as just some guy in a pub talking about beating me once. After a spectacular flying knee debut and subsequent knockout of Sean Strickland, the UFC set them up to clash for the title at UFC 281 in November 2022. At Madison Square Garden on November 12, 2022, Adesanya controlled the first 4 rounds after he was ahead on all judges' scorecards, only for Pereira to unleash a fight-ending barrage in round 5, securing a TKO and claiming the middleweight championship in heartbreaking fashion for Izzy. That dramatic finish underscored Pereira's ability to land one decisive sequence no matter how dominant the opponent. Dana White swiftly approved a rematch, and on April 8, 2023 in Miami, Adesanya had his revenge. He baited Alex into distance exchanges, then landed a devastating right-hand combination in round 2 to reclaim the title through spectacular knockout, ending the series 3-1 in favor of Pereira overall, but Adesanya led 2-1 in MMA. Even though the situation got tense during the build-up to their fights, the bad blood faded afterward. Adesanya praised Pereira, calling him a special human being, and said he learned a lot from their battles. Pereira also showed respect, saying Adesanya's trash talk actually motivated him to join the UFC and change his life. From struggling with alcoholism in Brazil to becoming the only man to beat Adesanya more than once. After their last fight together, Pereira moved up to the light heavyweight division, capturing the title before losing it in March 2025 to Magomed Ankalaev at UFC 313 by unanimous decision. Meanwhile, Adesanya lost his middleweight belt to Sean Strickland at UFC 293 in September 2023, after which he suffered his first submission loss in the hands of Dricus du Plessis in August 2024 and returned to the octagon in February 2025, where he was stopped by Nassourdine Imavov through second-round TKO defeat. Even though a third fight between them seems unlikely, their rivalry remains one of the most powerful and dramatic stories in combat sports. This rivalry had Silva facing off with Chael Sonnen, the brash trash talker and fierce underdog. Silva rarely needed the mic to speak, but Sonnen used it as a weapon. At UFC 117, Sonnen stormed into title contention with audacious statements, promising to retire Silva. During the fight, Sonnen dominated nearly every inch of the action. He stunned Silva early, took him to the mat, and poured on relentless ground and pound. By round 4, he was far ahead on the scorecards, appearing set to pull off one of MMA's greatest upsets. Then, with 3 minutes left in the final round, Silva locked in a triangle armbar from his back as Sonnen tapped. It instantly became a legend in the sport because it was fight of the night, submission of the night, and later inducted into the Hall of Fame's fight wing. 2 years later, in UFC 148, Silva accepted a rematch in 2012. This time, the dynamic flipped. Silva landed a crushing TKO in round 2, ending Sonnen's momentum and reclaiming dominance in a violent, definitive finish. What made their rivalry so intense was how different their personalities were. Chael Sonnen talked non-stop, often trashing Silva's country and even his family. He was loud, bold, and always stirring drama. Silva, on the other hand, stayed calm, quiet, and didn't say much outside the cage. Those two fights are now cornerstone chapters in UFC lore, one for a comeback punched out of nowhere and another for absolute redemption. Both earned Silva dominant finishes, but Sonnen created a legacy by forcing the greatest striker ever into his darkest hour. The first fight is Hall of Fame caliber, and their feud is frequently ranked among UFC's best ever rivalries. Despite moving on, Silva got into a boxing exhibition match against Chael Sonnen in June 2024. The fight, which was part of the Spot and Fight night in Brazil, ended in a draw. Prior to that, he also had a professional boxing match against Jake Paul in October 2022. Meanwhile, Sonnen stepped back from fighting to focus on commentary, media work, and promotional roles. He is currently a coach on The Ultimate Fighter 33 alongside Daniel Cormier. While he admitted Silva won on the whole, even in a later boxing exhibition that ruled a draw, but the emotional weight of those UFC losses never left him. It was cage warfare told through personality. Stoic legend versus trash-talking challenger. The contrast made every moment captivating. And though there was no trilogy in MMA, their two clashes define what a modern UFC feud looks like: intensity, respect, and indelible results. The feud arguably began backstage at UFC 121 in October 2010 when a young Jon Jones met heavyweight Daniel Cormier. What was intended as light banter didn't jibe with Cormier's Olympic-level wrestling credentials, sparking a tension that would define their rivalry. Fast forward to 2014, Cormier moved down to light heavyweight, positioning himself for a title shot. After Alexander Gustafsson pulled out due to injury, Cormier was slotted in to challenge Jones, who was the reigning champion. Their promotional buildup reached boiling point during a press event in August, erupting into a full-blown brawl on the hotel lobby floor. That clash became emblematic of the deep animosity between them. UFC 182 finally gave the world their first fight. Jones controlled the 5-round bout and walked away with a unanimous decision win, despite a positive out-of-competition cocaine test that emerged days later. Since cocaine isn't banned out of competition, the result stood, but Cormier's anger was evident. Jones's drama didn't stop. He was stripped of the light heavyweight belt following a hit-and-run incident in April 2015 involving a pregnant woman and received an indefinite suspension. UFC 187 elevated Cormier into Jones's spot, and he claimed the vacant title by defeating Anthony Johnson via third-round rear naked choke. They were set for a rematch at UFC 200 in July 2016, but Jones was pulled by USADA for a potential PED violation. That postponement only fueled the rivalry further as both fighters issued pointed calls and insults via social media and interviews. Finally, at UFC 214 in July 2017, they met again. Cormier entered as the champion and looked competitive early, trading jabs and pressing forward. In round 3, Jones landed a devastating head kick and finished Cormier by TKO. Shortly after, he failed a drug test for turinabol. The California Commission overturned the result to a no contest and restored Cormier's title. Cormier later reflected on the high stakes and emotional intensity of the rivalry, while Jones admitted it brought out a uniquely dark level of hatred, at one point threatening to kill Cormier if provoked and even training on Christmas Day, driven by fury. Across those encounters and controversies, the Jones vs. Cormier saga fused personal insult, athletic stakes, legal scandal, and cage warfare into one of MMA's most compelling rivalries. When UFC lightweight champ Rafael dos Anjos pulled out of UFC 196 with an injury, Nate Diaz stepped in on just 11 days' notice. At the press conference, Diaz attacked Conor McGregor for taking everything he worked for. It was loud, raw, and real, and it set the stage for one of the UFC's most surprising and intense rivalries. McGregor started strong, landing clean shots and controlling round 1. But in round 2, Diaz turned the tables. He hurt McGregor with punches, forced a sloppy takedown, and quickly submitted him with a rear naked choke. It became a huge upset, and the moment Nate Diaz truly stepped out of his brother Nick's shadow. After their first fight, the hype exploded. The UFC originally scheduled the rematch for UFC 200, but McGregor was pulled for not showing up to media events. Eventually, they met again at UFC 202. This time, the fight was a war. 5 rounds of back-and-forth action. McGregor made adjustments, used better movement, and won by majority decision. Many thought it could have gone either way, but McGregor got his revenge. Their fights were dramatic, unpredictable, and full of tension. UFC 202 became one of the highest-selling events in UFC history, thanks in part to the trash talk, press conferences, and mutual disrespect between the two. Fans were hooked not just on the fights, but the energy and chaos surrounding them. Nearly a decade removed from their last fight, but Diaz believes that, despite his advancing age, he can deliver the proper trilogy that MMA fans have been waiting for. As of today, no official bout has been scheduled. Still, their rivalry isn't just about wins or losses. It's about two fighters with totally different styles, personalities, and attitudes clashing at the perfect time. It's one of the most iconic beefs in UFC history, and the story, for now, remains unfinished. What began as mutual respect soon darkened. In early 2018, Khabib confronted McGregor's close friend Artem Lobov in a Brooklyn hotel following disparaging remarks made by Lobov about Khabib. 2 days later, during media appearances at UFC 223, McGregor and his entourage stormed the Barclays Center and attacked the bus carrying Khabib and other fighters. That's when McGregor threw a metal dolly through the bus window, injuring several, including Michael Chiesa and Ray Borg. Khabib later described laughing at the chaos, mocking the spectacle McGregor created. Meanwhile, McGregor was chasing lightweight glory after winning the featherweight title. UFC stripped him of multiple belts while he pursued a boxing match with Floyd Mayweather. Khabib, frustrated by UFC's perceived favoritism toward McGregor for a title shot, voiced displeasure on Twitter and in interviews, insisting he deserved his shot before Conor got elevated. The climax arrived at UFC 229. Khabib dismantled McGregor with grappling dominance, securing a fourth-round submission via a neck crank. He remained undefeated and retained the lightweight title. McGregor tapped out in front of the world under the highest-grossing UFC pay-per-view to date with 2.4 million buys. Yet the cage didn't calm passions. Instantly after winning, Khabib vaulted over the fence and charged into McGregor's corner, igniting chaos. Two members of Khabib's team entered the octagon and attacked McGregor. Brawl spilled inside and out. Security intervened, arrests followed, and the sport watched in disbelief. Khabib later apologized, saying McGregor's insults, attacking his religion, nationality, and family, justified his reaction. Nevada's Athletic Commission held back payouts and handed down suspensions. Khabib received a 9-month ban and $500,000 fine. McGregor was suspended for 6 months and fined $50,000. Several cornermen received additional penalties. Chiesa later sued McGregor for emotional and physical injuries from the bus incident, settling privately in 2022. The McGregor-Khabib rivalry isn't just a lights-out fight. It blended international culture clash, media manipulation, and raw animosity. The saga turned into a business giant. UFC 229 shattered PPV numbers. McGregor reportedly earned over $50 million from the fight, including endorsements, while Khabib cemented his legacy as a dominant, undefeated champion. Khabib announced his retirement after UFC 254 in October 2020, citing the death of his father and coach. Meanwhile, McGregor pushed for rematch talk that never materialized. Back in 2024, coach Javier Mendez mentioned Khabib had returned to training with him, clarifying that there is no indication of discussions about Khabib returning to MMA. This means a rematch is highly unlikely since Khabib has stepped away. This feud redefined UFC's boundaries and shaped the sport's most explosive chapter.